Part 1. The Trail That Shouldn't Exist. If you ever find a trail in the woods that doesn't appear on any map, turn around before the trees stop sounding alive. Before we begin tonight's story, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. And if you enjoy disturbing wilderness horror stories, stay until the end, because this one only gets worse the deeper they go. The first thing Caleb noticed was the silence. Not the normal kind of silence you hear in the wilderness at night. Not the peaceful kind filled with distant insects and shifting leaves. This silence felt wrong. Heavy. Like the forest itself was holding its breath. Caleb stopped walking and adjusted the straps of his backpack. Behind him, Marcus nearly walked straight into him. "Why'd you stop?" Marcus whispered. Caleb didn't answer immediately. He shined his flashlight between the trees surrounding the narrow trail. Tall pines leaned inward as if they were listening. "You hear that?" Caleb finally asked. Marcus frowned. "Hear what?" "Exactly." Marcus rolled his eyes nervously. "Dude, don't start that creepy crap again." The two men had been hiking for nearly 6 hours through Black Ridge National Forest. The trip was supposed to be simple. 3 days in the woods before winter closed the higher trails. Caleb loved hiking. Marcus only came because he was recently divorced and couldn't stand being alone in his apartment anymore. By sunset they realized they were lost. Not seriously lost at first. Just turned around. At least that's what Caleb kept telling himself. The map in his jacket pocket showed a ranger station less than 4 miles east, but every direction in the forest now looked identical. Pine trees, dark earth, mist, and that strange silence. Marcus nervously kicked at a rock. "Maybe we should set camp." "No," Caleb said quickly. "We keep moving." "Why?" Caleb hesitated. Because stopping felt dangerous. But he didn't know how to explain that without sounding insane. They continued down the trail. Their flashlights sliced through the darkness while cold wind hissed through the branches overhead. After another 20 minutes, Marcus suddenly froze. "Wait." Caleb turned. "What?" Marcus pointed ahead. There was a sign nailed to a tree. Both men stared at it. The wood looked ancient and rotten, barely hanging together. Painted across it in faded white letters were the words, "Don't follow the whistling." Marcus laughed uneasily. "Okay, that's not funny." Caleb stepped closer. The nails holding the sign in place were rusted black. The wood around them looked burned. Almost like someone had tried to destroy it. "Probably some old hunting prank," Marcus muttered. But Caleb didn't answer. Because underneath the warning, someone had carved something else into the wood. Not painted. Scratched. Deep enough to expose fresh pale wood beneath the surface. "Red. It knows your name now." A cold feeling spread through Caleb's chest. "Let's go," he whispered. They walked faster after that. The trail narrowed until branches scraped against their jackets from both sides. Several times Caleb could have sworn he saw movement between the trees. Tall shapes. Watching. But whenever he pointed the flashlight toward them, there was nothing there. Marcus kept talking to fill the silence. "That sign had to be fake," he said. "Probably teenagers messing around." "Maybe." "And whistles?" "Seriously?" Caleb nodded absent-mindedly. Then the whistle came. Both men stopped instantly. It echoed faintly through the woods ahead of them. "Oh, slow. Human." Marcus forced a laugh. "Nope. Absolutely not." The whistle came again. Closer this time. 3 soft notes. Caleb's stomach tightened. "Someone's out there," Marcus whispered. The whistle answered immediately. 3 more notes. Closer. Too close. Caleb swept the flashlight through the trees. Nothing. Then Marcus grabbed his arm hard enough to hurt. "Caleb." "What?" Marcus pointed left. Between the trees stood a figure. Tall. Perfectly still. Its body was hidden behind shadows, but Caleb could make out the outline of a man wearing what looked like an old ranger coat. The figure's head tilted slowly sideways. Then it whistled again. 3 notes. Marcus backed away instantly. "Hey. We're armed, man." No response. The figure didn't move. Didn't blink. Didn't breathe. Caleb's flashlight trembled in his hand. "Let's leave," he whispered. Marcus didn't argue. They turned and hurried down the trail, boots crunching violently across dead leaves. Behind them, the whistling continued. Always the same 3 notes. Always the same distance away. For nearly 15 minutes they kept moving, until Marcus suddenly grabbed Caleb again. "Wait." Caleb spun around angrily. "What now?" Marcus pointed ahead with shaking fingers. Caleb's blood turned cold. The rotten warning sign stood directly in front of them again. Don't follow the whistling. The exact same sign. The same burned wood. The same scratches. They had somehow walked in a circle. Marcus stared at Caleb in panic. That's impossible. The whistle came again. This time directly behind them. Caleb slowly turned his flashlight toward the trees. The figure was closer now. Much closer. And it wasn't alone anymore. Shapes stood silently between the pines all around them. Tall. Motionless. Watching. Marcus stumbled backward. What the hell are those things? One of the figures stepped forward into the flashlight beam. Its face looked almost human. Almost. The skin was stretched too tightly across its skull. Its mouth hung open unnaturally wide, exposing dark gums and jagged teeth. And its eyes reflected light like an animal's. Then it smiled. The whistle echoed again from somewhere deeper in the forest. The creatures immediately turned their heads toward the sound. Every single one of them. As if responding to a command. And then they started walking toward Caleb and Marcus. Slowly. Without making a sound. Marcus screamed, "Run!" The two men sprinted blindly into the woods, crashing through branches and mud while the darkness swallowed the trail behind them. Caleb could hear movement everywhere now. Not footsteps. Something worse. Bodies gliding between trees. Keeping pace with them. Watching them. Hunting them. Then Marcus suddenly vanished. 1 second he was beside Caleb. The next he was gone. Caleb skidded to a stop. Marcus. Silence. Then, a scream exploded somewhere deep in the forest. Cut off instantly. Caleb stood frozen in terror. And from the darkness ahead of him, Marcus's voice whispered softly, "Caleb, help me." But the voice sounded wrong. Too slow. Too hollow. Too perfect. Then came the whistle again. Right behind him. End of part 1. Part 2, the voice in the trees. Caleb couldn't move. The whistle had come from directly behind him. Hot fear crawled through his entire body as Marcus's voice echoed again through the darkness. "Caleb, please." The words sounded wet. Distorted. Like someone trying too hard to sound human. Caleb slowly turned around. Nothing stood behind him. Only trees. Tall black trunks stretching endlessly into darkness. Then the flashlight in his hand flickered once. Twice. And went out. "Come on. Come on," Caleb muttered desperately while slamming the side of it with his palm. The beam returned weakly. Just enough light to reveal movement ahead. A figure stepped silently between the trees. Caleb raised the flashlight instinctively. And nearly screamed. It was Marcus. At least, it looked like Marcus. His clothes were torn and covered in mud. Blood ran down one side of his neck, disappearing beneath his jacket collar. But something was wrong with his face. His smile stretched too wide. And his eyes never blinked. "Marcus," Caleb whispered. The figure tilted its head slowly. "Help me," it said again. Same voice. Same tone. But empty. Like a recording. Caleb took a step backward. The thing wearing Marcus's face copied him exactly. Step for step. The flashlight trembled violently in Caleb's grip. "Marcus, where are you?" The creature smiled wider. Then it spoke in a completely different voice. An old woman's voice. Still alive. Caleb's blood froze. The thing suddenly jerked sideways unnaturally fast, disappearing behind a tree. Then another whistle echoed through the woods. 3 notes. Closer than ever. Branches snapped all around him. Something was circling him in the dark. Caleb turned wildly with the flashlight, trying to track the sounds. Every direction looked identical. Tree after tree after tree. Then he saw dozens of eyes reflecting back at him from the woods. Not moving. Watching. He ran. He didn't care where anymore. He shoved through thick brush and stumbled over roots while icy wind clawed at his face. Behind him came the sounds of movement, fast movement, darting between the trees. But strangely, nothing touched him. It felt like they were hurting him somewhere. The realization made his stomach twist. After nearly 10 minutes of blind running, Caleb burst into a clearing and collapsed onto wet dirt. In front of him stood a cabin. An old fire lookout cabin. Its wooden walls leaned slightly to one side, and half the roof appeared collapsed, but dim yellow light glowed from inside. Caleb stared at it in disbelief. He hadn't seen any structure marked on the map. Another whistle echoed behind the tree line. Closer. Caleb didn't hesitate anymore. He sprinted to the cabin and pounded violently on the door. "Help. Please." No answer. The whistle came again. Caleb grabbed the rusted handle and shoved the door open himself. The cabin smelled like mold and smoke. An oil lantern burned on a table near the center of the room, casting weak orange light across dusty walls. The place looked abandoned, except for one thing. A pot of stew sat over a small fire, still warm. Caleb backed away slowly. Someone was here. The floorboards creaked above him. He looked up instantly. There was a second floor, and something had just moved. "Hello?" Caleb called shakily. Silence. Then, thump. A heavy footstep directly overhead. Caleb grabbed a rusted fireplace poker near the wall. Another thump. Slow. Deliberate. Someone upstairs was walking toward the staircase. Caleb raised the poker defensively as the stairs groaned under heavy weight. A figure descended slowly from the darkness above. An old man, tall and painfully thin. His gray beard reached nearly to his chest, and one cloudy white eye stared in a different direction than the other. He held an old hunting rifle loosely in one hand. The old man stopped halfway down the stairs. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly. Caleb nearly collapsed with relief. "Please, you have to help me. My friend's missing. There are things out there." "I know." The old man's expression didn't change. Caleb stared at him. "You know?" The old man descended the rest of the stairs slowly. "They followed you here." As if responding to his words, something scratched softly across the outside wall of the cabin. Caleb spun toward the sound. Then another scratch came from the roof. The old man sighed tiredly. "They do that every night." Caleb whispered, "What are they?" The old man ignored the question. Instead, he walked to the window and pulled the curtain shut tightly. "You hear whistling," he said. "You don't answer it. You hear someone calling your name outside." He looked directly at Caleb. "You do not go outside." Caleb swallowed hard. "Those things took Marcus." The old man's face darkened slightly. "Then Marcus is already dead." A loud bang suddenly exploded against the cabin door. Caleb jumped violently. Another bang. Something heavy slammed against the wood from outside. The lantern flickered. Then came Marcus's voice. "Caleb, open the door." The old man immediately grabbed Caleb's arm painfully hard. "Do not listen to it. Marcus is out there. That is not your friend anymore." Another slam rattled the cabin. Then another voice joined Marcus's. A woman crying softly. Then a child laughing. Then dozens of voices all whispering at once from outside the cabin walls. Caleb covered his ears. "What the hell are they?" The old man finally answered. "They're what's left of the people who followed the trail." Silence fell suddenly after that. No scratching. No whispers. Nothing. Even the wind disappeared. The old man's face went pale instantly. "That's bad," he whispered. Caleb stared at him. "What?" The old man slowly looked toward the ceiling. "When they go quiet." A soft creak echoed upstairs. Both men froze. Another creak. Directly above them. But nobody had gone back upstairs. The old man raised the rifle slowly. Something was inside the cabin with them now. Then came the whistle. Not outside. Inside the house. Right above Caleb's head. End of part 2. Part 3, the thing upstairs. The whistle drifted through the ceiling directly above Caleb. 3 slow notes. Soft. Patient. The old man raised the rifle toward the second floor staircase without blinking. Caleb whispered, "How did it get inside?" The old man's jaw tightened. It was probably already here. Another creak echoed above them. Slow footsteps crossed the second floor. Not hiding anymore. The lantern flickered violently as cold air spread through the cabin. Caleb could suddenly see his own breath. "What do we do?" he whispered. The old man kept the rifle aimed upward. "Pray it hasn't learned your face yet." Before Caleb could ask what that meant, thud. Something heavy dropped onto the floor upstairs. The entire cabin shook. Dust drifted from the ceiling beams. Then silence. Complete silence. The old man carefully stepped toward the staircase. "What are you doing?" Caleb hissed. "If it stays upstairs, we die downstairs." "That makes no sense." The old man looked back at him with that cloudy white eye. "You'll understand soon enough." Another whistle came from above. Closer this time. The old man slowly climbed the staircase. Each step groaned loudly beneath his boots. Caleb followed reluctantly, gripping the fireplace poker so tightly his knuckles hurt. The second floor was little more than a single open room. Rotting walls. Broken furniture. A filthy mattress shoved against one corner. The lantern light barely reached the far end of the room. But Caleb immediately noticed something strange. The floor was covered in muddy footprints. Hundreds of them. Bare human footprints. Some small. Some enormous. All leading toward the far wall. The old man froze. "Oh no." Caleb moved closer carefully. The wall looked wrong somehow. The wood planks bent inward unnaturally. Then Caleb realized why. They weren't planks. It was a door. Hidden beneath old boards and dirt. A secret entrance. The whistle came again. This time directly behind the hidden door. 3 slow notes. Caleb backed away instinctively. What's down there? The old man didn't answer immediately. He looked terrified. Finally he whispered, "The mine." Caleb stared at him. "There's a mine under this place?" The old man nodded slowly. "Old silver mine. Closed in the 70s after people started disappearing." Another soft thump came from behind the hidden door. Something moved below them. Caleb swallowed hard. "You knew this was here?" "I tried sealing it years ago." "Years ago?" The old man suddenly grabbed Caleb's arm. "Listen carefully. If that door opens, do not let it touch you." Before Caleb could respond, bang! The hidden door shook violently from the other side. Dust exploded from the walls. Then came Marcus's voice again, screaming, "Caleb, help me." Caleb instinctively stepped forward. The old man slammed him backward hard enough to knock him against the wall. "That isn't him." Another bang. The wood cracked. Caleb could hear scratching now. Dozens of fingernails scraping from the other side. Then came whispering. Hundreds of overlapping voices. Some crying. Some laughing. Some begging for help. The old man aimed the rifle directly at the door. "It's trying to bake you." "What is it?" Caleb shouted. The old man's face looked hollow in the lantern light. "Nobody knows." The scratching suddenly stopped. Then came a single quiet sentence from behind the door. Spoken in Caleb's exact voice. "Let me out." Caleb felt every hair on his body rise. The old man pulled the rifle trigger instantly. Boom. The shotgun blast exploded through the room, tearing a hole through the hidden door. For one brief second, Caleb saw movement inside the darkness below. Something pale. Tall. Its limbs bent the wrong direction. And its eyes. Too many eyes. Then the entire wall burst inward. The hidden door exploded apart as a creature lunged into the room. Caleb screamed. The thing moved on all fours with horrifying speed, slamming into the old man and sending the rifle flying across the room. The lantern crashed to the floor. Darkness swallowed everything. The old man yelled, "Run!" Caleb swung the fireplace poker blindly. It connected with something soft. A shriek erupted inches from his face. Not human. Not animal. Something in between. Caleb stumbled backward toward the stairs while claws scraped across the wooden floor around him. In the darkness he could hear more movement below the broken doorway. More creatures climbing upward. Dozens of them. The old man screamed suddenly. A wet choking sound followed. Then silence. "No!" Caleb shouted. A flashlight beam flickered weakly across the room. The rifle lay near the stairs. Caleb dove for it just as something grabbed his ankle. Cold fingers wrapped around his leg. He looked down. A face stared up at him from the darkness. Marcus. Or what used to be Marcus. Its jaw hung open far too wide. Its skin looked stretched and gray, and its eyes reflected light like a wolf's. "Stay," it whispered. Caleb kicked it hard in the face and grabbed the rifle. The creature shrieked violently. Then more hands emerged from the darkness around it. Too many hands. Pale fingers crawling across the floor like spiders. Caleb fired blindly. Boom. The muzzle flash illuminated the room for half a second. Long enough to reveal at least 6 creatures rushing toward him from the darkness. He ran. Caleb hurled himself down the stairs 2 at a time while screams exploded behind him upstairs. The entire cabin shook from the movement above. He burst into the first-floor room and slammed into the front door desperately. Locked. His hands shook violently as he fought the rusted latch. Upstairs, footsteps thundered toward the staircase. Fast. Too fast. The door finally burst open. Caleb sprinted outside into the freezing night. But the forest looked different now. The trees had moved closer. Far closer. Like they had surrounded the cabin while he was inside. And between every tree, figures stood silently watching him. Dozens of them. Motionless. Waiting. Then the cabin behind him went completely silent. Caleb slowly turned around. The upstairs window now glowed with pale white light. And standing inside the window was the old man. Except his neck was bent sideways unnaturally. And when he smiled, Caleb realized the thing looking out from the cabin wasn't the old man anymore. The whistle echoed again from deep within the forest. And every figure between the trees began walking toward him at once. End of Part 3. Part 4, Beneath Black Ridge. The figures emerged from the trees slowly. Dozens of them. Maybe more. Caleb backed away from the cabin, gripping the old rifle so tightly his hands hurt. Cold wind swept through the clearing, carrying the smell of wet earth and something rotten underneath it. Every figure moved the same way, slow, jerking slightly, like puppets learning how to walk. The thing standing in the upstairs cabin window still wore the old man's face. Its broken neck twitched violently while it watched Caleb below. Then it raised one hand and pointed toward the forest. The creatures immediately stopped moving. All at once, silence swallowed the clearing again. Caleb's heart pounded so hard it hurt. Then the whistle echoed through the woods. 3 notes. This time the figures stepped aside, creating a narrow path between the trees. They wanted him to go somewhere. No, Caleb whispered. Another whistle. Closer. The creatures began twitching violently, their heads snapping toward him unnaturally fast. Caleb realized something horrifying. If he didn't move, they would. So he ran directly into the forest. The figures followed instantly. Not sprinting, not chasing, just walking, but somehow staying close no matter how fast he moved. Branches tore across Caleb's face as he stumbled downhill through darkness. The flashlight beam from the rifle barely worked now, flickering every few seconds. Behind him came the whistle. Always behind him, guiding him, or hunting him. After several minutes, the ground suddenly disappeared beneath his feet. Caleb screamed as he slid violently down loose dirt and rocks before crashing hard into stone below. Pain exploded through his shoulder. For several seconds he couldn't breathe. Then he realized where he was. A tunnel. Cold stone walls surrounded him on both sides. Rusted metal tracks disappeared into darkness ahead. The mine. The creatures had driven him into the mine. Caleb forced himself upright, groaning in pain. His flashlight revealed old wooden support beams covered in mold and black stains. Something dripped steadily deeper in the tunnel. Water. Or blood. He couldn't tell. Then came movement above him. Caleb looked back toward the tunnel entrance. Figures stood at the top of the slope staring down at him silently. None of them entered. One stepped slightly forward into the weak flashlight beam. Marcus. Or the thing pretending to be Marcus. Its mouth stretched open impossibly wide as it whispered, "Go deeper." Then all the figures vanished back into the trees simultaneously. Caleb stood frozen. Why wouldn't they come inside? The answer arrived a moment later. A low sound echoed from deeper in the mine. Not a whistle. Breathing. Massive. Wet breathing. Caleb slowly turned toward the darkness ahead. Something else lived down here. Something worse. The tunnel suddenly trembled. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Then came a distant metallic screech somewhere deep underground. Caleb nearly dropped the rifle. The sound reminded him of metal dragging slowly across concrete. Then a voice echoed through the mine. Help. A woman's voice. Faint. Human. Caleb froze. Please? The voice sounded terrified. Alive. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but another part of him knew this might be the only other survivor. Hello, he shouted carefully. Silence. Then, down here. The voice echoed from farther inside the tunnel. Caleb swallowed hard and moved forward slowly. The deeper he went, the colder the mine became. Rusted mining carts appeared along the tracks, many overturned as if people had fled in panic decades earlier. Then Caleb saw the first body. At least he thought it was a body. A skeleton lay slumped against the tunnel wall wearing old mining gear. The bones were covered in strange black streaks that spread across the stone around it like veins. Caleb moved faster. The breathing sound returned. Closer now. Heavy. Huge. The woman's voice cried again somewhere ahead. Hurry. Caleb rounded a corner and stopped instantly. The tunnel opened into a massive underground chamber. Old mining equipment sat abandoned everywhere, covered in dust and decay. And hanging from the ceiling above the chamber were bodies. Dozens of them. Some fresh. Some ancient skeletons. All suspended upside down by black root-like growths spreading across the cave ceiling. Caleb stumbled backward in horror. Then one of the bodies opened its eyes. Help me. It was a woman. Still alive. Barely. Black veins crawled across her skin and disappeared into the roots wrapped around her body. Oh my God. She looked at him desperately. You have to leave. Caleb stepped closer carefully. What happened here? The woman started crying. It learns people. A deep sound suddenly echoed through the chamber. Thump. The entire cave vibrated. The woman's terrified expression changed instantly. Hide, she whispered. Thump. Closer. The hanging bodies began twitching violently overhead. Caleb aimed the flashlight toward the far side of the chamber. Something enormous moved in the darkness beyond the mining equipment. Too large to be human. Too tall. Thump. A massive silhouette slowly emerged into the weak light. Caleb's breath caught in his throat. The creature was at least 9 feet tall. Its body looked vaguely human, but twisted and stretched beyond recognition. Long pale limbs dragged across the stone floor while dozens of black root-like tendrils pulsed beneath its translucent skin. But the worst part was its face. It had no eyes, only smooth flesh. Yet somehow Caleb knew it was staring directly at him. The woman hanging from the ceiling began sobbing uncontrollably. It can smell fear. The creature suddenly stopped moving. Its head tilted slowly. Then it whistled. 3 notes. But now Caleb understood the horrifying truth. The whistle wasn't a call. It was communication. And somewhere behind him in the tunnels, dozens of whistles answered back. The creatures in the forest were coming underground. The giant thing smiled slowly as if it knew there was nowhere left to run. Then all the lanterns hanging throughout the mine suddenly lit at once. And Caleb realized the walls weren't made entirely of stone. There were faces trapped inside them. Human faces, still moving, still alive, whispering his name. Caleb, Caleb, stay with us. The giant creature took one long step toward him, then another, and the tunnel behind Caleb collapsed. End of Part 4. Part 5, The Hollow Below. The collapsing tunnel exploded behind Caleb in a wave of dust and rock. He threw himself sideways as debris slammed across the cave floor. The impact knocked the rifle from his hands and sent the flashlight spinning into darkness. For one horrifying second, everything went black. Then the lanterns hanging throughout the chamber flickered again. Dim orange light revealed the giant creature only a few feet away now. It moved slowly, almost calmly, like it already knew Caleb couldn't escape. The hanging bodies overhead twisted violently in their root-like cocoons, whispering in overlapping voices. Run. Don't let it touch you. It remembers. The creature tilted its smooth, eyeless face toward Caleb. Then it inhaled deeply, a horrible rattling breath. And suddenly every whisper in the cave stopped. Complete silence. Caleb scrambled backward across the stone floor, searching desperately for the rifle. The woman hanging from the ceiling screamed. Don't breathe. Too late. The creature's head snapped toward him instantly. Fast. Far too fast for something that large. Caleb realized the truth. It hunted by sound. The monster lunged. Caleb rolled sideways just as one enormous arm slammed into the stone where he had been seconds earlier. Crack. The rock shattered from the impact. Caleb grabbed a rusted mining tool from the ground and swung wildly as the creature turned toward him again. The metal struck its shoulder. The thing didn't even react. Then dozens of whistles echoed through the tunnels around them. The forest creatures were close now. The giant monster paused, listening, almost irritated. The woman above Caleb cried desperately. You woke it up. It never comes this high unless it hears someone. What is it? Caleb shouted. The creature immediately turned toward his voice again. The woman's face went pale. You idiot. The monster charged. Caleb sprinted between old mining carts as the giant thing crashed through equipment behind him. Metal screamed against stone while lanterns swung violently overhead. The cave shook harder with every step the creature took. Caleb ducked beneath a collapsed beam and nearly slipped on something wet covering the ground. Blood. Fresh blood. The trail led toward another tunnel branching deeper underground. A tunnel lined with old symbols carved into the walls. Circles. Strange twisting shapes. And one phrase repeated over and over. It wears our voices. Another whistle sounded directly behind Caleb. He turned. 3 of the pale forest creatures stood silently at the entrance to the chamber. Marcus stood among them. Its mouth twitched unnaturally. The hollow wants you. Then the giant creature slammed into one of the smaller creatures without warning. The impact tore it completely apart. Black blood exploded across the walls. The remaining creatures immediately fled deeper into the tunnels shrieking. The giant monster let out a low vibrating growl. I hated them too. Caleb used the distraction to run into the carved tunnel. The air inside smelled different. Older. The walls became smoother as if this part of the mine wasn't man-made at all. The deeper he went, the stranger the tunnel became. The stone walls pulsed faintly, like breathing flesh beneath rock. Caleb's chest tightened. This place wasn't natural. Then he saw light ahead. Soft white light flickering around a corner. Caleb slowed carefully and peeked inside. A hidden room. Small, ancient, and filled with bones. Human bones covered the floor in piles. At the center of the room stood an old wooden table holding dozens of journals, lanterns, and rusted tools. Someone had lived down here. Caleb rushed toward the table and grabbed the nearest journal. The pages looked decades old. Most were unreadable from water damage, but one passage caught his eye immediately. The whistling things are not the source. They are only servants. The hollow beneath the mountain copies what it consumes. Voices, faces, memories. It learns people until nothing remains. Caleb's hands shook as he turned more pages. Another passage. The creature cannot leave the mind completely, so it sends the stolen ones into the woods to bring others back. A loud scream echoed somewhere deeper in the tunnels. Human. The woman from the chamber. Then silence. Caleb kept reading frantically. Do not let it mark you. Once it learns your voice, it begins to hollow you from inside. Caleb froze. Slowly he touched his throat. Pain. A sharp burning pain. He pulled his hand away. Black liquid stained his fingertips. No. Another journal lay open nearby with a photograph tucked inside. A group of miners standing beside the original mine entrance. Caleb's blood turned cold. The old man from the cabin stood among them. But the photograph looked ancient. At least 50 years old. And he hadn't aged a day. A low whistle suddenly echoed from directly outside the room. 3 notes. Caleb spun toward the entrance. Marcus stood there smiling. Only now its appearance was worse. Its skin sagged unnaturally as if the face no longer fit properly. Black veins pulsed beneath its eyes. You shouldn't have read that, it whispered. Caleb grabbed the rifle from beside the table. Someone must have dragged it here long ago, and aimed directly at Marcus. Stay back. Marcus smiled wider. You're already changing. The burning sensation in Caleb's throat suddenly spread into his chest. His vision blurred briefly, and for one horrifying second, he heard voices inside his own head, whispering. Hundreds of them. The same voices trapped in the walls. Marcus took another slow step forward. The hollow heard you. Behind Marcus, shadows began moving in the tunnel. Dozens of pale figures emerging silently from darkness. Caleb backed away until his shoulders hit the far wall. No escape. Marcus tilted its head. Soon you'll whistle too. Then every lantern in the hidden room suddenly went out. And something enormous inhaled in the darkness behind the walls. Right beneath Caleb's feet. End of Part 5. Part 6. The voices it stole. The breathing beneath the floor grew louder. Slow. Massive. Like something sleeping directly under the hidden room. Caleb stood frozen in darkness while pale figures filled the tunnel entrance ahead of him. Their eyes reflected faintly in the blackness like animals waiting to feed. Marcus smiled wider than a human face should allow. You can hear them now, it whispered. The voices inside Caleb's head grew louder instantly. Crying, begging, screaming. Fragments of memories flooded through his mind that didn't belong to him. A woman running through snow. A miner trapped underground. Someone hiding beneath a bed while something whistled outside their house. Caleb grabbed his head in pain. Make it stop. Marcus took another step forward. It's opening you. Suddenly the floor beneath Caleb pulsed. Not shaking. Pulsing. Like a heartbeat. The hidden room wasn't built inside the mine. It was built on top of something alive. The realization nearly made Caleb vomit. One of the pale creatures lunged from the doorway without warning. Caleb fired instantly. Boom. The muzzle flash lit the room for a split second. The creature's face exploded apart, but instead of collapsing, its body kept moving blindly forward. Black liquid sprayed across the walls. The other creatures shrieked violently and rushed the doorway all at once. Caleb overturned the wooden table into the entrance and sprinted deeper into the room. There has to be another way out. His flashlight flickered weakly across the walls until it landed on something hidden behind hanging cloth. A narrow tunnel. Small. Barely wide enough to crawl through. The creatures slammed against the overturned table behind him. Wood cracked loudly. Marcus's distorted voice echoed through the room. You can't leave the hollow. Caleb dropped to his knees and crawled into the narrow passage just as the table shattered behind him. Cold stone scraped across his shoulders while darkness swallowed him completely. Behind him came the sounds of claws dragging through the tunnel entrance. They were following him. The passage sloped downward steeply. The deeper Caleb crawled, the warmer the air became. That terrified him more than the creatures. Mines were supposed to get colder underground, not warmer. Then the smell hit him. Rot. Sweet and thick. Like meat left in the sun. Caleb gagged. The tunnel suddenly widened enough for him to stand. He raised the flashlight and nearly screamed. The cavern around him looked organic. The walls no longer resembled stone at all. They looked like flesh. Veins pulsed beneath translucent surfaces while black root-like tendrils spread across the ceiling like arteries. The entire cave moved slowly, breathing. "Oh my God." Whispers surrounded him instantly. Not in his head anymore. Real whispers. Coming from the walls themselves. Faces pushed outward beneath the fleshy surface all around him. Human faces trapped inside the living walls. Some crying. Some sleeping. Some staring directly at him. One old man pressed halfway through the wall opened his eyes suddenly. "Don't let it see you," he rasped. Caleb stumbled backward. Another face emerged nearby. A teenage girl. Then another. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Still alive somehow. The old man in the wall whispered again. "It keeps us dreaming." "What is this place?" Caleb asked shakily. The man's eyes filled with tears. "It fell here long before the mine." A distant whistle echoed somewhere ahead in the living cavern. Every trapped face immediately looked terrified. The old man whispered urgently. "Hide." The walls suddenly darkened. The pulsing slowed. Then Caleb heard it moving. Not walking. Crawling. Something enormous dragged itself through the darkness ahead. Closer. Closer. Caleb quickly ducked behind a massive root-like structure protruding from the wall. The whispers stopped completely. Then the creature emerged. Caleb nearly stopped breathing. This was not the giant thing from the mine chamber. This was worse. Far worse. It looked unfinished. Like dozens of human bodies melted together into one towering mass of limbs and faces. Arms stretched from its sides at impossible angles while half-formed mouths opened and closed silently across its body. And at the center of it all was Marcus's face. Still alive. Still conscious. "Caleb," Marcus whispered weakly. His face was fused into the creature's chest beneath layers of moving flesh. Tears streamed from his eyes. "Kill me." Caleb's stomach twisted violently. The massive creature paused suddenly. All the mouths across its body inhaled at once, listening. Then Marcus's face looked directly toward Caleb's hiding place. For 1 second Caleb thought Marcus was warning him. Then Marcus smiled. "The hollow found you." Every head on the creature snapped toward Caleb instantly. The monster shrieked. The sound was unbearable, thousands of human screams layered together into one deafening howl. The cavern walls began convulsing violently. Faces screamed from inside the flesh around him. Caleb ran. The creature crashed after him through the living tunnels while massive tendrils burst from the walls trying to grab him. One wrapped around his ankle. Pull. "What?" Caleb hacked at it desperately with a rusted knife from his belt until black fluid sprayed across his hands. The tendril released him instantly. Behind him the creature screamed louder. The black fluid burned. The walls recoiled from it. Caleb suddenly remembered the journals. "Do not let it mark you." The liquid wasn't blood. It was part of the hollow itself. And it hated being wounded. An idea formed in Caleb's mind. A terrible idea. The tunnel ahead suddenly opened into an enormous underground pit. Caleb skidded to a stop at the edge. Below him stretched something impossible. A massive pulsing abyss buried beneath the mountain. Countless human bodies fused together into one gigantic living mass disappearing endlessly into darkness. Eyes opened across its surface. Thousands of eyes. And every single one turned toward Caleb at once. Then the entire pit whispered his name together. "Caleb." The creature behind him stopped at the edge of the pit. Marcus's face smiled from its chest. "You're part of us now." Then Caleb looked down at his own arms. Black veins were spreading beneath his skin. And somewhere deep in the darkness below, something much larger began to wake up. End of Part 6. Part 7, The Heart of the Hollow. The abyss beneath the mountain opened its eyes. Thousands of them. Blinking independently across the endless mass of fused bodies below Caleb. The whispers became deafening. Every voice he had heard since entering Black Ridge now echoed together from the pit. Lost hikers. Miners. Hunters. People who had vanished decades apart. All speaking at once. "Don't fall. It's awake. Run." The enormous creature behind Caleb let out a low growl as Marcus's face twisted unnaturally from its chest. "You made it angry." The mountain suddenly trembled violently. Chunks of flesh-like stone rained from the ceiling into the pit below. The giant living mass beneath them began moving faster now, massive waves rolling across its surface as if something inside was trying to rise upward. Caleb backed away from the edge in horror. Black veins continued spreading across his arms. He could feel them beneath his skin, moving. The hollow was inside him now. Then Caleb remembered the black fluid from the severed tendril. The walls had recoiled from it. The hollow could be hurt. Marcus's face watched him carefully. "You're thinking about fighting it?" Caleb slowly raised the rusted knife still covered in black fluid. Marcus's expression changed instantly. Fear. Real fear. "The hollow doesn't die," Marcus whispered. The pit below suddenly convulsed. Then a massive shape began rising slowly from the darkness beneath the mountain. At first Caleb thought it was another creature. Then he realized the horrible truth. It was the original body. Everything else in the mine, the whistling creatures, the giant hunters, the copied people, were only pieces of it. This thing was the center. The heart of the hollow. A gigantic human-like torso emerged from the abyss, fused into miles of living flesh beneath the mountain. Hundreds of faces stretched across its body, all frozen in agony. And at the center of its chest was a gigantic mouth, still whistling. 3 slow notes. The sound shook the cavern itself. The creatures surrounding Caleb immediately dropped to the ground in submission. Even Marcus's fused monster body trembled violently. The hollow controlled all of them. Then the massive mouth stopped whistling and spoke, not aloud, inside Caleb's mind. "You came willingly." Pain exploded through Caleb's skull. He dropped to one knee screaming while memories flooded his brain again. Except now they weren't random. He saw everything. The mine collapsed decades ago. Workers trapped underground hearing whistles in the dark. The first thing discovered beneath the mountain. A living organism buried impossibly deep beneath Black Ridge for centuries. Not human. Never human. The miners tried sealing it away. But it learned them. Copied them. Spread. Then Caleb saw the old man from the cabin. Young again. Terrified. Burning the mine entrance while creatures screamed inside. And finally Caleb understood. Nobody had survived Black Ridge. Not for decades. The old man had died long ago. The hollow simply wore him afterward. Caleb gasped for air as the visions ended. The heart of the hollow stared directly at him with thousands of shifting eyes. Stay. The black veins across Caleb's body pulsed violently. He could hear the whispers more clearly now. Not because they were louder. Because he was becoming one of them. Marcus's face looked almost sympathetic now. "It gets easier when you stop fighting." Caleb slowly stood. No. The giant mouth across the hollow's chest opened wider. The whistle began again. Every creature in the cavern started moving toward Caleb simultaneously. Pale figures crawled across the walls and ceiling while fused bodies dragged themselves from tunnels all around him. Too many. There was no escape anymore. Then Caleb noticed something. The black fluid on the knife was smoking, reacting to the heat coming from the heart of the hollow. An idea hit him instantly. Dangerous. Possibly suicidal. But maybe the only chance left. Caleb looked toward the massive pulsing tendrils connecting the heart to the surrounding walls. Veins. Nerves. Feeding the entire organism. If the black fluid harmed it, maybe its own body could poison itself. Marcus realized what Caleb was thinking. Its expression twisted into panic. "Don't do that." The creatures charged. Caleb sprinted forward first. Straight toward the heart. The entire cavern erupted into screams. The hollow's giant mouth opened wider in rage while massive tendrils lunged toward Caleb from every direction. One wrapped around his shoulder, tearing flesh. Another grabbed his leg. The whispers inside his head became unbearable. "Stay with us. Don't leave. We can make you forget." Caleb screamed and slashed wildly at the tendrils with the knife. Black fluid exploded across the exposed veins surrounding the heart. Instantly the cavern convulsed. The hollow shrieked. Not through the air. Through every mind connected to it. The sound nearly knocked Caleb unconscious. The veins around the chamber blackened and began rotting rapidly. Creatures collapsed screaming all around him as their bodies twisted uncontrollably. Marcus's fused face stared at Caleb in horror. "What did you do?" The infection spread fast. Too fast. The hollow's own corrupted tissue was poisoning itself. Massive cracks split across the walls while parts of the living cavern began collapsing inward. The heart screamed again. And this time, Caleb heard something new beneath the rage. Fear. Real fear. The mountain shook violently. Stone collapsed from above. The entire mine system was coming down. Marcus's face suddenly looked desperate. "Caleb, please." For one brief second, Marcus sounded human again. Truly human. Tears streamed down his distorted face. "Don't leave me here." Caleb froze. Then the hollow spoke through every voice at once. "If we die, you die too." The black veins across Caleb's body spread into his neck. His vision darkened. The infection had gone too far. The cavern split open beneath his feet. Caleb lost balance and fell toward the endless living abyss below, while the heart of the hollow rose upward to catch him. End of Part 7. Part 8, The Last Whistle. Caleb fell into darkness. The cavern collapsed around him while the heart of the hollow rose from the abyss below like a nightmare waking beneath the earth. Massive tendrils reached upward, waiting to catch him. The screams of thousands echoed through the collapsing mine as stone and flesh rained into the pit together. Then Caleb slammed hard onto something soft, living. The heart had caught him. He lay sprawled across the gigantic creature's chest while hundreds of human faces writhed beneath translucent flesh around him. All of them whispering, begging, crying, "Help us." The black veins across Caleb's body pulsed violently now. His arms felt numb. Every heartbeat carried the hollow deeper inside him. Above him, the cavern ceiling cracked apart. Moonlight spilled faintly into the abyss for the first time. The hollow shrieked instantly. Not from pain. From panic. It hated the light. Caleb stared upward through falling debris and realized the collapse had opened a path to the surface. A way out. The heart felt it too. Massive tendrils surged upward desperately, trying to seal the opening before Caleb could escape. The creature was afraid of being seen, of being exposed. Then Caleb noticed something embedded within the flesh beneath him. Dynamite. Old mining explosives. Entire crates of them. The miners must have tried destroying the hollow decades ago. And failed. Marcus's face slowly emerged from the flesh nearby, weak and trembling. Caleb. For the first time since entering Black Ridge, Marcus truly looked like himself again. No distorted smile. No hollow eyes. Just fear. "I can feel everything," he whispered. "All the people it took, they're still awake inside here." Caleb's chest tightened. Can they be saved? Marcus looked like he wanted to say yes, but he couldn't. They're part of it now. The heart suddenly convulsed beneath them. It knew what Caleb was thinking. The whispers changed instantly. More desperate now. "Don't burn us. You'll kill everyone. Stay." Massive tendrils wrapped around Caleb's legs and arms, trying to pull him deeper into the flesh. The hollow's giant mouth opened across the chamber below, and for the first time, it screamed with its real voice. Not human. Not animal. Something ancient. Something that should never have existed beneath the earth. The sound shook the entire mountain. Caleb grabbed one of the old explosive sticks from the crate and searched frantically for a lighter. Nothing. The whispers laughed around him. Then Marcus weakly lifted one trembling hand. An old miner's lantern flickered beside him. Still burning. "Do it," Marcus whispered. Caleb hesitated. Because Marcus wouldn't survive. None of them would. Marcus understood immediately. Tears filled his eyes. "It already took me." The mountain shook violently again. The opening to the surface began collapsing shut. Time was running out. Caleb grabbed the lantern. The hollow sensed it instantly. Every face across the massive flesh body began screaming together. Thousands of voices filling the cavern with pure terror. The tendrils tightened around Caleb's arms hard enough to crack bone. The heart's mouth whistled violently now. Not 3 notes anymore. A frantic shrieking whistle echoing across the entire mountain, calling every creature back. The pale forest things poured into the collapsing cavern from every tunnel. Hundreds of them, crawling across walls and ceilings toward Caleb. Marcus looked at him one last time. "Don't let it spread." Then Caleb shoved the lantern into the dynamite crates. The explosion was instant. White light swallowed the cavern. The blast tore through the heart of the hollow with a scream so loud Caleb felt blood pour from his ears. Fire raced across black tendrils while the gigantic organism convulsed violently beneath the mountain. The creatures rushing toward him burst apart screaming. The living walls collapsed inward. Faces trapped inside the flesh cried out one final time, then fell silent. The explosion hurled Caleb upward through collapsing stone and debris. He barely remembered climbing. Only pain, smoke, and endless screaming below him. The mine collapsed behind him section by section as he dragged himself through narrow tunnels toward moonlight above. Then suddenly, cold night air. Caleb burst from the mountainside and rolled onto wet earth outside. The forest around Black Ridge burned with strange pale fire spreading through the trees. And deep beneath the ground, something still screamed. Caleb staggered away from the collapsing mountain while dawn slowly began breaking across the horizon. The whistles had stopped. For the first time since entering the forest, everything was quiet. Weeks later, rescue teams searched Black Ridge after hikers reported explosions in the mountains. They found nothing. No mine. No cabin. No bodies. Only miles of burned forest. Caleb told nobody the truth, because who would believe him? But sometimes late at night, he still hears whispers, very faint, deep inside his walls. And every morning, the black veins on his arms have spread a little farther. Last month, 3 hikers vanished near Black Ridge National Forest. Search teams later discovered strange footprints surrounding their abandoned campsite. Bare human footprints, leading into the trees. And according to the official report, one rescuer claimed he heard whistling deep in the woods after sunset. 3 slow notes. Thank you for watching this story all the way to the end. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment telling me which part disturbed you the most. And if you hear whistling outside tonight, don't answer it. End of part 8.